Okay. We should be live again. So there are some troubles with my internet connection today, huh?
Yeah.
That's kind of sad.
So...
I restarted the stream, but I don't actually know if someone's still in there.
I don't know. Wait. Oh, it's working again.
How can I join the stream once again?
There should be a link in the stream channel.
I added a link to thing in the Discord. If it changed it, I don't know if it changed.
Well, I mean, at least it runs again. This is not very nice. Okay. Anyway, I don't actually know where the stream broke off before.
Well, the effect looked like a giant waterfall, and you were adding more and more particles. That's basically all I know.
Okay.
And just after someone asked how many particle was needed to make the game crash,
Yeah.
and then the stream crashed.
Okay. Yeah. That's something that I actually read. It's an interesting question because it depends on how powerful your machine is. Basically, the game itself handles particles very well. You can draw several thousand particles, but you will notice some slowdowns, and also it would probably not make much sense because at some point the game will stop to calculate the depth of particles. So if I have, for example, 500 particles here, I already did that here, and distribute them over some like this. Let's maybe use something else because otherwise it won't actually be visible what I mean, and use transparent. So now we have a lot of particles in front and behind each other, and the game will actually stop rendering the depth differences. So basically we'll only see one big mishmash in the game of textures, and it will not actually look like it's... You can already see it here sometimes that some particles that are way in the back are rendered in front. So this is something that, yeah, the game basically doesn't handle very well, but particles itself, it doesn't really care how many there are, it will slow down, and I know that we tried with several thousands. You can see in the bottom left corner how many particles are currently drawn, and if I increased it, it will probably crash at some point, but I mean, 1,000 particles, or even, I don't know, 5,000 could be interesting. No, it will stop drawing it. 5,000 seems to be too much.
So there is a limit.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think if I add another instance here, I can basically add several thousands. Now we have already 11,000 particles. It's not really an issue, and you can see it's still quite fast. But at some point, I think the game or the editor, in this case, will tell me there are too many objects on the screen. It doesn't seem to do it right now.
We have another question. How long does it take to create a particle?
That's...
For example, the bright projectile.
We can actually take a look at that one. Let's do that. I don't want to
I
save
think that would be the best.
Yeah, let's do that. I haven't looked into the wraith particles in a long time. Basically, it highly depends, because if there is something you can reuse, if you already created something, and you can just edit it in a way that it makes sense, then it won't actually take a long time. Let me just teach the editor again where the particles are. Let me check. Oh, I think the editor actually crashed now. Probably didn't like that I opened that I had 30,000 particles before. So let's actually restart the editor. Okay, and open. Okay, so now it should be, or maybe not. It still didn't. Okay, yeah, that's a bug of the editor that I have. For some reason, it doesn't actually load the base textures anymore, and I have to load them manually every time. So this is the particle effect of the Wraith hive ships, basically. So when I drag it around, you can actually see the trail behind it that you would see in game, and
So that's the classical particle or the artillery one from the hive ship?
no, this is the heavy. Does the hive ship have artillery effect?
Yes, at least as a ability, or at least some of them.
Well, this is the normal hive ship heavy plasma projectile.
Okay.
So this consists of several emitters, and there are 3 which are just for the projectile itself, for the core, so to say. So normally you could do it like this. This is just a blue texture, a blue ball, and basically it has a trail. So you could do that, but it does look kind of boring. And in order to achieve a nice how do you say it? In order for it to look better, you add more layers onto it. Normally I do it in 3 layers, so I add a second projectile or particle effect that is just a glow around it, and I add a 3rd layer which is another glow, which is a bit dimmer than the first one. So in that, by doing that with the 3 layers, it just looks more interesting with the glow. You have a nice glow around your projectile itself. Just in my opinion, it looks better. Then we also have, for this one, again, this is basically one texture that I created with Cinema 4D, and that I use for this to basically simulate a very bright light and reflection, or is it refraction? Yeah, I think reflection in the camera lens. This is basically inspired by Mass Effect, because Mass Effect used a lot of this kind of lens flares, the J.J. Abrams-like lens flares, and so this is used in the in this.
It makes sense. You already mentioned Element Zero, so why not?
Yeah. Also, if you take a look at the earlier seasons of Stargate Atlantis, I think in the first season, if you look at how the projectile of the hives look, especially at the end of the first season when they fire on the ancient laser station, no, laser satellite, it looks basically the same. It has a very bright
Core?
What's it called? I forgot the word. it has this very bright light and the reflection in the camera lens flare. Exactly, I forgot lens flare for a second. And then there's another thing to this, which is the flash, which just appears. It doesn't actually follow the object. It just appears on where the particle starts, and it just simulates a kind of a muzzle flash on the ship itself when it fires the effect. And so if I put everything together, then this is basically what it looks like. If you do this effect from scratch, and if you have already the texture for this, so if you have the lens flare, for example, because the other ones, I just used the basic texture, and let me check. It's index 2. So if we look at the chart again, I used this particle basically, and I basically just used for the light flash itself, for the I used a custom texture. But if you do everything just in a particle editor, you would probably be at around maybe an hour if you do it from scratch, depending on how long it takes for you, because you need to test this in-game always to get the size correctly. You don't really have a reference. I mean, you can activate the ground, which will have a certain size. So if you do a lot of particle effects, you will have a feel for the right size of the effect, how big it has to be. But other than that, you don't really have much reference points. So you will need to test that stuff a lot in the game itself. But yeah, here I basically, if we take a look at the other Wraith particles, I think if I remember correctly, I basically did this once and then reused much of it in the other particles as well. So if we take a look at the smaller one, so this was the heavy one, we have a light one. And if we take a look at that, and unfortunately it forgot the path to the base texture again. So I think I have it everywhere. Really? It forgot? Oh, it's still in the models folder. Okay. With light flash, I think is. It didn't like that. Yeah, crashing is something that you have to be tolerant of, because yeah, it does crash a lot. Raise projectile plasma light, and I want actually to load the P particle master and use that in everyone. So if we take a look at this, this is the smaller projectile, but it's basically the same, just downsized, and sometimes I play a bit with the values of different sizes of the core itself. Like, for example, you could actually, if you don't want such a big halo, you could either do that smaller, or in this case maybe increase the size of the inner one, make it to 20, which is maybe a bit too big, 15. So now we'd have a very thick particle effect with a smaller halo or smaller shine around it. Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do with the particle editor. There are some things that you can't really do, which is things like something spiraling upwards, for example, is not something that you can do, because you can only give it a speed, and you can only give it one acceleration. So if it goes in one direction and you accelerate it in another direction, at some point the acceleration will take over. And that means you can only really give it one direction to go, and you can't let it spiral around, because spiraling would mean that you would change the acceleration on X, Y, and Z axis. This is not something the particle editor can do, unfortunately. But what you can do is create a model with two particle emitters on it, and then rotate the model itself. So that way you have basically two particle effects that leave a trail of particles behind it, and you rotate the model itself, and that way you would have something spiraling. I think that is the way that the vanilla game did it with the really big ships of the Zen consortium of the underground. They have this one big cannon that you can fire, and it has this projectile that has a spiraling effect. And I think they did it through particle editing, through a model actually. Okay. It's already very late, I think. I don't think we can start something completely new.
May I?
Yeah.
If you're in the process of showing, may I have one? I would like to know one thing, or I would like to see one thing. Could you show us, if it's not that time consuming, how would you make a continuous beam of light, for example, something like phaser or I-beam or the Asgard plasma weapon?
Yeah. Not an issue. Actually, let's do that from scratch then, just to show you the whole process. Again, I will load the particle master, and I know already that we need basically an orb or something, so I think that's 2. So now we have an orb, and then we would need a laser, so we would need something that either travels with your mouse and leaves a trail behind. I mean, I could do that already by just increasing this to like 100, and that way this already leaves a trail behind. So already if something fires the projectile and the projectile flies, it will leave this trail of smoke behind. Then let's maybe make it red actually. We don't have many red particle effects, so I will take the green and the blue channel and put it to 0 so it gets red. Maybe actually don't put it entirely to 0, put it to like 1.2, maybe 1.1, and this also to 0.1, of course, not 1.1. Yeah, so now it looks a bit more like a laser. Maybe let's actually look how far we are away. And now we could do something similar as I did before, which is crashing the particle editor. This is
always fun crashing
yeah.
particles.
I think it actually has to do with the fact that I downloaded a new version of it, because the developer of the original particle editor actually continues developing the particle editor. You can download a new version on GitHub, and I think, at least my feeling is, that this new version is more prone to crash than the original 2006 or 2007 version. So maybe that actually has something to do with it. But again, copying stuff here and adding child emitters is something that it just doesn't seem to like in general. So let's do this manually. Let's just put 2 into it, and this is already 2. And then let's make 1 bigger than the other, maybe double. Make it black. So already, this is just one, and together with the other which shines a bit, let's maybe decrease this a bit. Let's make it 1.8. And for this we need none. Let's actually put green in here so I don't have to set it for both. 0.1. And the same here. None and green. So this, if I set it blue to green, it just locks to green, so it will have the same values as green, so that I don't have to do it in both channels. I just have to do it in one. Alright. And it already looks a bit better. Maybe let's do 0.2, so the middle is a bit more shiny. Oh wait, I actually changed the wrong one. I wanted this to have 1 and this one to have 0.8. Oh no. Huh. I think I switched them around. Doesn't matter, it actually looks fine that way. Maybe if this one... So this is why you actually need to set names. Like this is the inner part, this is the outer part, so that you actually remember which one is which. And the inner part. Yeah. So without the inner part it looks like this. With the inner part it has more of a glow to it. And now again let's put it to maybe 100. Oh yeah, and also this to 100. And of course it will look weird on the when it stands still, but when it actually travels it will look fine. And now what you could also do is, because a lot of, if you think about the Ori super laser for example, it has a bigger, it's bigger at the tip, so like it has a bigger impact. So you could do that here as well. Let's actually save that so that the next time it crashes we don't have to start. Let's just call it red laser. Oh yeah, right, I changed my layout, so yeah. Okay, and the red laser needs a bigger tip, so what we'll do is we'll scale it up in the beginning and then immediately scale it back to the original value. So I will insert a key right in between 0 and 10% of its lifetime, like here, and then I will put one at 10% so that it goes down immediately, and that way we should basically have, yeah, like a red Kamehameha, yeah. Maybe do that a bit bigger, like let's say 70. Yeah, that looks nice.
It kinda looks like angry sperm.
Yeah. Maybe. Also, it probably makes sense to then scale it down at the end as well. So maybe let's put one at 90 and then decrease the value at the back to 0. Oh, no, that doesn't look good. Maybe like that. Or actually, no, we could do it like so.
I somehow don't want to see the cannon that actually fires such a projectile.
Now it really looks like something out of a biology book.
I think I know what canon you think.
Indeed.
I'm not 100% sure.
We could do that differently. We could just fade it out at the end. Because right now it looks very rugged, or it just suddenly stops. And we can change that by fading the colors out to 0, so that way it will be invisible. It will get invisible at the end, instead of just disappearing. And of course, I did that only for one of them, for the outer part. I would have to do the same for the inner part. The good thing is that if you do something like that, you can go and just paste the keyframes that you actually need, like this one, and then go to the other one and paste it in, and that way you have it on both. But this one has a different value set here, so I need to change that anyway. 20. And also I want the other one to fade out, so I'll do the same here. I'll do that manually really quick. Set it to 0, and the green one. I think, yeah. Okay, and that way both should basically fade away in the end. Okay, maybe let's create something else than this. I mean, we could create some trippy stuff again, as I did at an earlier time.
You mean that stuff that required some narcotics?
Yes, like for example, let's do something fun. Let's put it up at maybe 150, like this, and then just say, you know, go everywhere. Maybe a bit faster, like 300. Oh yes. This looks very interesting. And let's say it has a 5-second lifetime, and this looks like... Do you remember the Windows screensaver of the very early days with the stars?
Yeah,
Star
indeed.
field. And let's say this should go downwards. So let's say it has a... So that it falls to the ground at some point. Let's do 70. And of course, how could it be? It should bounce. It needs to bounce. Okay. And make it very colorful.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you can make the color to change.
Yeah. It will show up any second. Let me just check real quick if we have any other questions. But I don't think so. Alright, so let's do another stream at some other time where hopefully my internet connection will be more stable anyway, and where we take a look at some actual stuff that I will create then some impact effects. But I think for now, I think we've been on it on almost 2 hours, not counting my failing internet. But yeah, there's one question of how many particles I did for the mod. Well, I don't actually know. I never counted them. But I mean, if you take a look at the mod as it is right now, and take a look at the models.
Couldn't you just say all of them?
Well, yeah, all of them. I don't actually... Well, almost all of them. I don't actually know how many there are, but for example, everything that has a PE is a particle effect for an engine. This is all done by me. Well, not everything. I think some of them, like the space race ships, were done by other people. Then everything with a P in front of it is something that I have done. There are a lot of things like explosion effects, which are really fun. Like P death explosion, huge. Oh, this will probably look horrible because it doesn't actually load the textures again. But I don't actually know how many, but I did most of them. Almost all. I actually had to learn a lot of it. It helps if you want to get into that. It helps if you actually open existing projectiles from different mods and just take a look at the individual emitters that are in there to just see how others did it, and a lot of things will become clear from just that, from just looking at the different already existing particle effects and particle effects from other modders. And of course you can take a look at the ones that I created for the mod if you open them. And there's stuff like that which is really fun, just letting things explode. And yeah, as you can see, it's just I actually didn't abide by my own rules and didn't actually name the different stuff. But I think that was also something that I did very early. And yeah. Yeah, it is complicated, but I mean, it's something that comes over time when you work with the particle editor. You will get a feel for it, and the more stuff you create, the more ideas you have for new stuff that you could try. Because there's always this, can I create something specific with the particle editor? I always think about a lot of stuff that we don't actually need in the game, but I just want to try if I can manage it or just can pull it off. Yeah. So just try it and don't be frustrated by the crashes. They will happen, unfortunately, but basically we'll have to save a lot and that way get around the crashes, because it's annoying, but it's not really the worst thing. Okay. I think if you guys have any other questions or would like to talk about something, or maybe I should show you something else.
I really don't. I think it was very insightful and very, very, very nice. So I really thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you as well for supporting me and for everyone who watched this. And next time we'll hopefully be able, with a more stable internet connection, to show you more specific how a specific effect is created. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.